Life is a sequence of challenges. Life is a sequence of challenges. In fact, there's a study that shows that every 3 to 4 months, you're going to have a crisis in your life. Well, I didn't say that. They said that you could just Google that. You know, every 3 to 4 months, you're going to have a crisis in your life or in your house. It doesn't have to be a big crisis. It could just be something just went wrong. But I think there's a truck making the noise outside there. Something can just, maybe your washing machine just went off and you didn't budget for that. Something else will have to suffer for that. That was a crisis. It's a mini crisis. So life is a sequence. I like what, I think it was Buddha. Buddha was the Indian leader and sage who lived in the 6th century. And he said that life is a sequence of spontaneous and unexpected changes. It says, you know, being mindfulness now, being very mindful. It says, do not resist them. Don't resist them. Just let them flow as naturally as possible. Some people can see some faces like that. And whichever way they want to move forward. Now that's very powerful. They want to move forward. That means our forward progression, we may not agree, are connected. It's often connected to our challenges, our crises. So it's interesting, but we do know that life experience contributes a lot to our mental situation. I've shared my little experience with you, with my own personal experience. My life experience contributed to the way I felt. Okay, well, I won't swap it for anything else, by the way. You know, somebody told me, oh, well, if you had been born in England, maybe you would have been a lot better now. You know, you're doing better than you're doing right now. No, I don't want to swap that. Because our experience decides the richness of our life, depending of if we look at it from the positive part, from the positive point of view. Because it's my experience that now defines who I am right now with regards to how many people in the same situation I could connect with. It's not just about reading books or going to school. It's about heart. And we're going to be talking, by the way, about heart a lot today, the heart science. So let's look at this a little bit. We're just going to write it down. Oftentimes, we'll come back to this. Your life experience eventually determines, the life experience eventually shapes our pattern of thought. So, pattern of thought. And pattern of thoughts eventually, if we think in a certain negative way continuously, that will eventually create a feeling, a certain amount of feeling that is corresponding, that is the same as your pattern of thought. And feeling is interesting, you know, according to the quantum model of reality. Of course, I'm into metaphysics and stuff like that. Okay, good. The rest of us, I'm going to lose you for 1 hour. I'm joking. No, I'm joking. So, the feeling is, according to the quantum model, is the most creative part of our existence, next to imagination. When you feel in a certain way and you sustain that feeling, it's just a matter of time. The body will interpret that. It's incredible. The body will interpret your feeling. So, therefore, feeling is the language of the body. The body, your body, does not listen to what you're saying, no. It waits until that thought produces a feeling. Feeling is the language of the body. So according to the quantum model. So eventually the feeling, if you feel anxious for so long because of the anxious neurotic way of thinking, the body will interpret that. So we have the physical symptoms. How do we spell that? You know, sometimes you don't know how to spell something, you just kind of, yeah, it's like that. You know, so that nobody sees who is. So physical symptoms. So this is the body interpreting or mirroring our internal environment. The internal environment will always decide the external environment, which is the physical symptoms. So from the physical symptoms, you know as much as I know, once you've been burnt once, what do you want to do? You want to avoid it. Avoidance. So the body is designed to protect us from, the body is designed to protect us from pain. Excuse me. So I remember one time like that, I think I had a bad experience. Somebody invited me over to I think about 2 doors away. I was like 11 or 12. Then I felt so anxious, and that place was too small. I felt I couldn't breathe. I was sweating, I knew I was in trouble. So I ran out, and I managed to kind of get home. Then about 2 weeks later, they called me up. Do you want to come over? We didn't know why you disappeared last time. We're having another party. I didn't have to work so hard for a lie to come through. The body is designed to protect our psyche from pain. I mean the brain, rather. The brain is designed around pain relief. A little child gets into your kitchen, reaches out, touches the hot kettle, gets burnt a little bit. Do you have to tell her or him the following day not to do the same thing? You don't have to. Even though, we shout, if you're like me, what are you doing? As if they wouldn't know, So we know that once we've been burnt a few times, the body goes into that self-protective mechanisms. We don't want to socialize anymore. We don't want to look into the mirror anymore. We don't want to work at that job anymore, to see that person anymore. We don't want to think about some certain things anymore. We repress them. We don't want to experience some certain live experience anymore because they become association memories. They could remind us of many things. So we kind of we basically surround our lives with layers of escapisms and, defense mechanisms. Why? Just to make sure that we limit the physical experiences that are being generated from our internal environments, our mind, our thoughts. Well, what we do know is that avoidances, unchallenged, will eventually create another life crisis. It's just a matter of time. So if you don't challenge the avoidances, eventually they're a perfect environment to breed anxiety back up. For example, if my avoidance mechanism is not going out of the house because I couldn't face the world anymore. I used to do that personally. It became so powerful, so overwhelming to actually go out anymore. So eventually I developed another outlet of anxiety. From just generalized anxieties, now I've got some agoraphobic situation going on there. So avoidance will eventually breed anxiety. Some people use like drinking. We know it could provide some short-term relief, but it's not the long-term transformation we're looking for. So that eventually creates another life crisis, and then just the cycle just continues like that. By the way, it's interesting to see this. This is a pattern of thought. Would you please let me know, as we go through life, especially negative experiences, what are those negative emotions that we'll experience? For example, sadness. Could you just give me a few as it comes to your mind?
Anger.
Yes. Anger. By the way, talking about anger. 1 minute, please. I'm getting some feedback somewhere. Talking about anger. Anger is the deadliest of all negative emotions. The body system cannot hold anger long term. It's incredible. The nervous system, the brain system, the emotional centers, they just fall apart when we hold onto anger long term. You could research this when you have time. There's a rack, there are racks of evidence that suggests that by just getting rid of anger, letting things go, letting people go, your anxiety situation is reconciled. It's incredible. So sometimes we tell people, we just work through anger situation with some people. Because when you are in a constant, perpetual state of being mad, you repress that, don't you, to move on with your life. But at the back of your deeper mind, the activities are not slowing down. They are fermenting for you until they eventually overwhelm the conscious mind. And do you know what happens? So much negative emotions, eventually the fight or flight response nervous system eventually gets triggered all the time, almost like 24/7. Chemicals, stress hormones are all over the place all the time, much more than the body can cope with. So when we are in a survival mode all the time because of the overwhelming emotions of anger, the body cannot perform homeostasis. Homeostasis, by the way, is just a tendency of the cells or the organism to perform the internal balances, its physiological balances, to just reset itself to make your life a better place for your being to reside, which is incredible. Anyway, that's just by the way. It could be something that somebody needs. Any other negative emotions at all before we go?
Shame.
Yes, absolutely. Shame. Thank you. More?
Grief. Guilt.
Yes, guilt and grief. Yes, thank you for that. Guilt and grief. I remember talking about grief when my mother passed away. My mother passed away when I was 19. And, you know, with all the things I was going through, it wasn't a good place at all. I didn't deal with that. But when the person came to tell me, you know, the elder in the family, no, not in the family, in the village area, see, they won't tell you all these things straightforward because they understood you're going to be heartbroken. I just realized all these weird things going on, people coming around, just nodding. One person can just nod and go back. What is going on? Then eventually somebody told me. Then I was so disappointed. I couldn't know what to do. And for like 2 months, I was just like, this is unreal. I didn't even cry. I didn't even show any emotions. I just repressed everything. Some people were thinking, this guy was strong. But I was experiencing some incredible, unusual mixtures of chemicals within my brain and my body. Then do you know what happened? Talking about grief, I didn't grieve properly. I was, after like 3 or 4 months later, I was walking down the street and everything just came back to my mind. It knocked my physiological balances out. And I was just on the floor crying like a baby, and everybody gathered together. And they said, what is going on here? I'd never experienced such things before. It was incredible. And eventually they got somebody who knew what he was doing, like a psychologist. And she was telling us that, he was telling us, the guy, he was telling me that, yeah, did you say he didn't cry for 3 months? Yeah, that's it. The body needs that. So sometimes if we experience grief and because life just goes ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, we've not been able to process or come to terms with the depth of some of the things we've been through. We know eventually they're going to feed off all these channels, which is interesting, by the way. Can we have one or more before we continue? What else could we have as we interact with life, as life deals with us, as I say?
Jealousy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, jealousy.
Fear.
Yes, why did we miss that? Fear, yeah, absolutely. Now we're experiencing some of these, some of them are primary emotions, negative emotions, some of them are secondary. But we know that when we experience these through life challenges, eventually, if we think about this a lot, we're eventually going to create some pattern of thought. If we meditate on a negative thinking all the time, we ruminate on them, they will eventually create a panel within our brain system that will reinforce that automatically. So that's when habits are formed within the brain system. then those will always be feeding our feeling, and our feeling will eventually be seen physically, and we begin to look for a way to avoid them. So that's interesting. Actually, at the back of your, some of you might want to help somebody with this, or you want to do this activity yourself. At the back of your sheet, I've got a bigger one, a bigger cycle there. It looks like this one on the screen. The first diagram there. And usually, what I do is that when I want to assist you at all, and we've built some rapport, and I know you very well, and I've realized that maybe the fear model could be useful to you. We actually go through this just to get some psychographic profile of you. What are some of the life experience? We start from the life experience. What are some of the life experience life experiences that you've gone through that you think might be able to might contribute to your anxiety? We're not digging deep at all. We're just kind of naming things down. Somebody said, well, I think when my parent got separated, I was a bit upset at that time. Well, we'll put separation there. And maybe redundancy, whatever it is that people have gone through, we'll put it there. Then we'll go to the thoughts. What kind of negative thoughts or intrusive thoughts do you experience as a result of this life challenges? We capture some of those thoughts. Then we go to the feelings. How did those things make you feel? They might come together. They might come back to some of these things we've analyzed at the start here. Then we want to be specific there. I felt very inferior. I felt that my life, there's no reason to live anymore. I felt I'm rubbish. I felt nobody likes me because of some of the experiences that we've gone through. And we capture all that there. Then afterwards, we also look at some of the physical symptoms that we go through. But what are the physical symptoms? How does your anxiety manifest itself? Then after that, what are the avoidance mechanisms? So we try to look for a way to capture as many avoidance mechanisms as possible. Because the fear model is built around shutting down the very, very powerful centers. And one of them is the avoidance mechanisms. So how do you avoid anxiety? How do you avoid your anxiety? It could be through internal avoidances or through something that we could see, like alcohol, the normal things. That's some of the most common forms of avoidances that we've experienced before. By the way, very quickly, I just raise some of this. It's good to raise this conscious awareness of what the avoidance mechanisms are. So would you please share with me some of the avoidance mechanisms? For instance, alcohol. How do we avoid anxiety? What are other ways? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So we could actually comfort eat, or overeat, or undereat, depending. Yeah.
Worry.
Yes, that's good actually, because some people feel there's a moral duty to worry, because it's a way of kind of getting some kind of control as well, feeling as though you're doing something, you're in control. So yeah, sure. Any other one at all?
Isolation. To isolate himself.
Yeah. Yeah, isolation. Like, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Any other one at all?
Substance abuse.
Yes. Substance abuse. And that's a big area. That's really a big area. Any other one at all?
Smoking.
Yeah, smoking, yeah. Somebody told me recently that, well, I smoke just, just because I want to. Interesting. Yeah, self-harm. And that's actually interesting, self-harm. Because it's not all self-harm that are as a result of defense mechanisms. It's a condition. Some people just self-harm because that's the only way they could express the overwhelming emotions. And at that moment, it could serve like as a way of coping, which suits into this category. But it's got a little tweak to it as well. Yeah, sure. Yeah, talking about smoking. So I was telling a little story about smoking. Somebody said, "Well, I smoke because I could quit any time." And I said to him, "Okay, it would be nice for you to quit. Actually, show me that you can quit next week." Yeah, I can absolutely. Well, he said he did it for 1 week, then he's back full whack again. I remember what Mark Twain was an American literature writer. Was a fantastic guy. Was a fantastic guy. He said, quitting smoking is one of the easiest things in the world. And he said, because I know this because I've done it thousands of times. Quitting started. So we do know that, we could start smoking somehow, but we could start smoking just because of the peer pressure, for instance. But it ends up becoming like a coping mechanism, a stress relief mechanism. Okay, so one more before we go at all.
So, is it high risk behaviours like parachuting and extreme sports? That kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So we could say adventure or extreme adventures. Yeah.
I don't know whether it's relevant, but would something like be bullying, like, offloading your own answers onto other people to avoid your own situations and problems?
Yeah. Is a lot. You could use. So
Sleeping.
yeah, actually sleeping too much.
Also, I find a lot of people avoid by helping other people. So if you're dealing with somebody else's problems, you don't deal with your own.
Yeah, helping others too much. So we're talking about the bullying. So how do we put that down? Um, do we say like aggression or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Aggression.
Or being hostile to people.
Yeah. Okay. We've had all these different ways that we avoid. A lot of them, we do them without thinking. A lot of them are just natural instincts of the body to protect itself, just to have some breather sometimes. So it is not something that we kind of say, okay, you do that, that's that. No, it's just something that comes natural, especially when we have some chemical situations. Anxiety is it's much more about, it's just much more about, I've got this anxiety. It's got a lot to do with what goes on in our brain, what goes on in our mind, which is interesting. Okay. So any other question at all with this one? We're going to have a break, a coffee break, a tea coffee break.
I was just thinking about that as well. I was thinking about, I used to work a lot with prisons, and
reckless and antisocial behaviour, they also be avoidance.
Yeah, yeah. Probably that's a better way to express these as well. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Any other question at all? Thanks for that.